Welcome to the Riff. Today, Jeremy and Justin talk about their favorite Jesus moments that are found in the Gospels. They also talk about a wide range of things. Honestly, they go off the rails at the end of this one, and if you make it to the end, you can consider yourself a true part of the Riff Raff. We hope today is helpful and hopeful. Thanks for listening.
Welcome to another episode of
The Riff.
We are so excited to come with another episode today. And so wherever you're listening, however you're listening, thank you for doing so. We continue to come at you from a very chilly studio, and that's all right. It's not about us.
It's not about us.
I felt like if we could be even in the cold, but we can deliver the hot good news of Jesus Christ, isn't that what we're going to do? That's what we're about, Justin. So let's...
That's horrible.
Whoa, what is that? Oh, some nuggets are coming out of the oven as we speak. So what are we serving today, Justin?
Oh, please stop. I can't. I just can't.
That would be awesome.
That would be awesome.
The mano.
That would be.
Fresh. So today we're going to talk about Jesus did what? Or something. I don't know what the title is, but we're going to...
That's it right there. You just nailed it.
Jesus did what?
They did what? We're going to talk about moments in the Gospels that you're like, what?
Yes.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. We might have time for, this might be the world's shortest episode, or this might be just, perfectly fit in our 30-minute, because we got sponsors and stuff. We are not supposed to go, when we get sponsors.
They're going to want us to
prove to them that we know how to.
We can do 30 minutes. If that's the first question they have, the answer is yes.
Yes, 30 minutes.
Yeah.
And honestly, people say the average attention span of a podcast listener is about 10 minutes. But North Pointers, 30 minutes is still shorter than their average.
That's true.
Attention span.
I
just feel like we're batting above average here.
For sure.
Point. Yeah,
for sure.
So, let's dive in. So, okay. So, I'm going to ask you to share one, whether it's a story in Scripture, something Jesus did, maybe it's something Jesus said.
Okay.
Of all the things there, what's something that you were like, man, that seems to either be the most bizarre or the most cool, or this is your favorite, or this is your favorite today.
Man.
What's something else? Share the same thing.
Okay, so here's the deal. I've had different moments in my life where I'm like, well, that's crazy. Here's something that blew my mind.
Oh, my word. That's a lot. Blew your mind.
But here's the deal. I think that rereading, and then listening to so many different avenues of like commentaries and different contextual like analysis of what that was, I think it helps so much, right? Because it just changes. Yeah, it just changes everything, right? So there's an author out there that talks about the whole idea of the Jewish way to read Scripture is like turning it over and over and over, and every side is a different side of the gem, right? Yeah. So it's just like as you continually like read through this. So there's a story in Scripture, okay? It's when Jesus is with Peter. Okay. And he says, on this rock, I'm going to build my church. That's a good one.
I like it.
Okay. So I've read that and I'm like, oh, that's pretty cool. And then we talk about Peter. Peter was a big thing. Like when I was growing up, I grew up Episcopalian, which is kind of like Catholic light. That's kind of what that is.
So St. Peter is a term maybe you've heard before?
A lot, right? right? And even like when you go, like Jamie and I.
Light.
Yeah, it's Catholic light.
Took me a while, but.
You got there. So there's a lot of that. Like, so as you talk about that, as you talk about this foundation, as you talk about this whole idea of Peter and this whole thing, like, right, Peter, Petros, rock on this, all this kind of stuff.
Oh, right? You're going Greek.
I know, right?
Spitting Greek out there.
So cool, though. It's really neat, right? Yeah. And then Marty Solomon, okay. Bema. All right. He does this thing.
Rumor
has it that Marty Solomon is going to be on this podcast.
It doesn't surprise me.
It doesn't surprise me.
Yeah.
So that's
because we got kind of at North Point, some of you might not know, we've got some famous people on staff at North Point
that are authors.
Preston Ulmer.
Oh, I was thinking of you.
It
is Preston Ulmer.
Yeah,
he wrote a book too.
Buddies with Marty. He calls him Marty Mart.
He calls him Martz, which is confusing because John Mart's at Springfield. So I don't know which one they're talking about. Yeah. So in Bema, they have an episode. It's still my favorite episode. It's called The Gates of Hell. And he digs into this whole idea of Jesus saying, on this rock, I'm going to build my church. And I'm telling you, it blew my mind because it's so scandalous, right? He talks about where they go. Caesarea Philippi, I believe, is where they go. to do this whole thing. And he's explaining this whole thing to Peter. But Marty walks through what is happening in Caesarea Philippi at the moment, which is this massive festival that's pretty much an orgy, right? And he paints...
Let me clarify. Not to the festival. I've been to the place
where
they did
said
those festival.
Right. There's a mouth, there's a spring. They called it the gates of hell. All this kind of stuff. He paints this beautiful picture of this crazy environment, right?
Yeah.
And then he's like, as he's walking through this, and he's walking through like these statues, right, of inappropriate objects that we would say. There's just crazy stuff happening. Right? And then he kind of stops, and then he starts to read the scripture again. And he's like, understand that this is when Jesus says, on this rock, here, like on this, all of this, that's where I'm building my church. So is this like complete like paradigm shift of like this Sunday school thing of like, Jesus has disciples, and on this disciple, he's going to build. Marty took it and was like, on this orgy, on this party, on all of this stuff that people are searching for, I'm going to build my church, right? And the gates of hell, this whole thing is not going to prevail against it. So for me, that when you look at what Jesus is doing, like in the context of everything, and then even like when you look back at Old Testament pieces, he was so not polished and so radical that people killed him. That's crazy.
Yeah, I love that.
So for me, that's the most recent thing that has gotten me like, oh my gosh. It just brings everything to color for me, where I'm like, this is so cool, right? Like he would say like, and just Jesus had a party like that, right? Because when we think of like Jesus going to a party, we usually think a pretty tame one.
Yeah.
It was not tame. It wasn't. So even all of those stories when Jesus is going to parties, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you asked me for one, but I guess I'm giving you a ton.
No,
when he's going to parties, like it's not like a 7-year-old's birthday party, right? Like he got like people are saying he's a drunk, right?
Yeah.
He's a glutton, like because he's hanging out in these spaces that I think is our like sanitized version of Jesus doesn't hang out in, right? Like he's in the seediest, craziest spaces that I don't think most churches would ever be like, oh, we gotta go there Tuesday. No, they're doing a Wednesday. What? Yeah, we're gonna do Bible study there, right? Like, so I think those for me, the parties that Jesus would go to, including that one in Gates of Hell, are the pieces that blow my mind about him.
Well, what I think that says, I think that's the power to really challenge our view of Christianity in the sense of with culture wars, right? Because a lot of times it's Christian bubble, it's it's the contamination, which is the Old Testament version of anything considered clean that comes in contact with anything considered unclean. It's not like there's any question about it. Is that which was clean is now contaminated.
Right.
And Jesus reversed that. He just didn't live like that. And he just believed that if he's the clean one and he comes into contact with the unclean one, that he doesn't become contaminated, which was the Jewish line of thought, that which was unclean has now become clean. And that's the challenge to us. And again, I don't think it's like saying, hey, let's throw our kid's 6-year-old birthday party at the gates of hell, or today's version of it. Like we don't charter them a plane to Vegas when they're 12 and say, you guys have fun, man. But so there are times of protection until we can replace that with direction. And so, but just that thought of, we have to be able to grow in our faith and have enough strength where we're not constrained to a bubble, where we can go out and be in the world, even if we're not of the world. Because that's our ability to show, hey, Jesus' life and life overflow. So yeah, I love that stuff.
And I think it's fascinating too to see that like Jesus isn't going to those parties when he's 19. At least we don't know, right? Yeah. There's something happens that for a good 30-year chunk that he's preparing for something, right? So I think you're right on. The whole idea of that, what did you say? Preparation and then direction? What'd you say?
Well, sometimes is as a parent, the first season of life, it's all about protection.
Protection and direction.
And then once we can give them direction, but in order for them to be able to respond to direction, you have to probably have a season of protection.
That's great.
Right?
I'm going to tattoo that.
You should. You should.
Yeah.
On them.
On them.
On them. Yep. So that'll be... I think if we come up, the pastor part of me is like protection, correction, then direction. I don't know. I don't know. No, I'm just going to punt that. But I like it. I think, how do we live our life? Jesus surprised so many. For me, the story that is my favorite, that is like you said, Jesus came across, he wasn't... he wasn't part of the religious elite, but yet the religious elite kept coming to him because they couldn't dismiss him, because everything he said was legit. It was obvious the dude knew his scripture. It was obvious he was well versed, yet he never landed the plane the way they landed the plane. And so it was so annoying. And if he didn't understand the context of scripture, they would have dismissed him as a crazy man, but they refused to. And even like Nicodemus comes to him because he's like, man, I see you know the scripture as much as we do, yet you're performing things like you're from God. So they were mesmerized. So I love the fact that Jesus was so smart. And he would just mess with people's minds. And so my favorite, and we shared this in a message before, but it's the whole prodigal son deal, right? And when he tells such an elaborate, he's a great storyteller. That's why when the Gospels, the writers of the Gospels are reflecting on the life of Jesus, stories, because our minds are not libraries filled with words, they're photo galleries filled with pictures. And they reflected on the stories that Jesus made come alive and then packed a punch with the story. But the story of the prodigal son, and it was a very familiar story. You got the Talmud and Mishnah, which we understand are Jewish collections, one of case studies of law and interpretations, and so every Jew in those days, the Jewish leaders knew these well. And Jesus borrows a very familiar story and then changes the ending on him. And it basically, there's the story there of that was very familiar to that day and age of the rebellious son. And it was going to be a case study of an Old Testament law that if your son's rebellious, you can kill him, which I am thankful my parents didn't grow up in that culture, because I think that's part of all children's environment is you have a season of that. But so that was a case study of basically yes, the dad has the right to off the son. And so when this rebellious son goes away, to be honest, doing something that's very natural for all of us to do, it's just search for meaning, search for purpose, search for all this. And he finds himself to be empty. And I love how Jesus just loads the deck against this kid. He defiantly said, I can't wait for you to die. I'm just so impatient. And then he runs to a distant land, a faraway land, which was so bizarre in that culture that you would go to a distant land. And then he's working in a pig farm, which to a Jewish man was like, oh my word. And then I long to fill my stomach with the pods the pigs are eating. He's just laying it on thick, just reeling them in. And then when he comes home, the story was of the prodigal son who came home, and the dad meets him, looking for him when he sees the audacity of his rebellious son to show his face again on this ranch. He runs out there, and the community comes with him, and the father chucks the stones, the first to throw the stone, and the community follows up, and they stone the kid, the end. And so they're thinking, Jesus is telling this story. Jesus knows that's what they're thinking. And so they're just thinking, get to the good part where they kill the kid, and the kid proves once and for all you can never break the law and be welcomed by the Father. And then Jesus changes the story and says, the Father ran to him, which they were ready for, but then threw his arms around him and kissed him. Says, my son's come home. And he did this to show our Father, which you would think the religious people would be like, oh my word, if that's true, then I have a shot. If that's true. Because if that's true, then maybe God's waiting for me. That's good news. Jesus was saying good news. But even good news sounds like bad news if you got bad theology. And it's because they knew that they weren't as good as the father, but they thought they were better than the younger brother in their culture. And so they thought, well, God can't kill all of us. And so, so we're probably safe. And so that's why I think he throws in the story of the older brother at the end. And then here's the older brother who can't stand this good news, which was these guys listening. So anyway, I love that. That's one example is that is an example of where Jesus says, man, I'm going to take what you know, and it's built on some part of truth, but I'm going to now show you the full realm of this truth and the nature of God, because you think you know God, but you do not know God. I am God. I am the Father revealed to you. And then boom. So I love that.
And that was also Kazaza, right? That's what you...
Kazaza, that dude. Kazaza was the ceremony where you publicly either disown or disembody your kid.
Yes.
And say, you are no longer welcome in this community because you have brought shame upon your father's family.
That's still one of the most memorable. You just be like, Kazaza his mug.
Kazaza that mug, yeah. Yeah. So, and I think both of those are examples of, there are resources now for us to be able to say, okay, what is the context? This context is beautiful. Mm-hmm. The context, when we understand the Bible wasn't written in English, the Bible wasn't written in the 21st century, and the Bible wasn't written to Americans. When we understand that, it doesn't mean it's not written for us. It just wasn't written to us. So now we've got to go back and figure out who is it written to, what did they understand it to be, and now what is there for me?
Great. So it's December now.
Yep.
Right. So as we enter the Christmas season, what's something that you would recommend?
Sugar cookies.
No, hold on. Let me finish.
Okay.
What would you recommend that's gluten-free?
Yeah.
No. What would you recommend on reading, on watching about the Christmas story? Because I think we probably also have a very sanitized version of that as well. So what are pieces out there that are helpful as we kind of enter that season?
I would say right now media is a resource that we have that is available to a lot of North Pointers. If you just go to our next steps, you can find, I'm assuming it's there, but we've offered that to North Pointers, so a lot of people are used to that. It's kind of like Netflix with Christian resources. And there's some good teaching from there. And so I don't know specifically, there's not one specifically that comes to mind, but I would just encourage you to go to any type of resource and search it. My favorite author that is inspirational, that doesn't feel like a Bible study though, about Christmas stuff specifically over the years, and it's been a while since he's written a bunch of new stuff, is Max Lucado on Anything on Christmas. I feel like it has that Christmas Hallmarky type of vibe, but it comes from a background of understanding what that culture was like, the oppression of the land in those days, of the people of the land, what it was like for a Roman government to rule and reign, and then to understand the seeming nobody. The characters of Christmas were nobodies that Jesus showed up to. So I like that. For me, and again, The Chosen has a Christmas episode that I think is pretty cool.
Whoa, I haven't gotten there.
I know.
Don't tell me.
I'm not going to tell you what happens.
I started watching it.
Mary's pregnant.
No, she is not.
But you won't see it coming. It's just like it comes. It's actually. Anyway,
man.
But what I like about that is, and that's why I really enjoy anything there. It helps me picture what the season was.
Mary's not married.
Betrothed even.
Who's the dad? Don't tell me.
You're going to have to watch.
Oh my God.
You're going to have to watch.
I can't wait.
What about you? What whether you share it with your family or other resources that have been helpful for you?
Not inspiring. John Dominic Crossan, Marcus Borg. I don't think they believe in Jesus, but they write about him.
Okay.
but it's fascinating.
What do you like about it?
It's, cultural. Like
Yeah.
they talk about what that is. So you mix that, for me at least, mix that in with a Max Lucado, and it makes this picture that's just like so pretty. Because they talk about that cultural time and like the whole winter solstice idea and this pagan holiday of what Christmas was and why it is, right? And how like the Christian community then took that and said there's truth with this and all of these layers of just crazy story, right? Of that, like Christmas is a moment to be like, man, that everything that feels dead in the middle of winter, like there's life, right?
Yeah.
Like there is something happening, which is the birth of a Christ, the Jesus, right? Like this whole idea. So those two authors, I think they do a really good job of painting the picture. They do really good stuff with Easter as well, of painting the picture of like the last week. And so I really like their stuff. I do. And I do like Max Lucado too. I really do. That's another one that we read a lot.
What about Philip Yancey? Are you a Yancey guy?
I have never read Yancey, and everybody loves him.
I like Yancey. The Jesus I Never Knew is not all about Christmas, but it's Yancey is, for my experience, feels like a college professor vibe, and really into the details. So it's kind of, for me, it's not easy to read. It's just kind of a little bit, feels like I have to read it slower and sometimes over, but he really goes into culture and context. He's great. He's like, his background, I believe he also kind of like Case for Christ guy. Lee Strobel.
Yeah.
I think Yancey also was a journalist. And so they come from it from that angle, right? Of just like, okay, here's the backstory. Here's what you need to know. Like, here's, if I'm writing a special that Lester Holt's going to walk through, I've got to know this, and this, right? And so it's helpful. So I like it. But it's good.
I love Lester Holt.
Oh,
he's great.
Okay, I got to tell you something. I'd say can I tell you? This is my weekly. If I don't have something going on at night, here's what I do. Here's my.
I can't wait.
We watch KY3 News.
Okay.
Leanne likes to watch it live.
It's a place to be.
It is. I always quickly tell her, as soon as they start a story, I tell her how it finishes. She's like, "How did you know?" I'm like, I just, the thing about the news, it doesn't, unless it happens at 5:59, I already know about it. Like anyway, so it's kind of a fun game we play. Then we watch Lester Holt.
Okay.
And at the end, Lester always says, "Be safe." And every time, without fail, it always gets a chuckle from someone in my family. I always say, "Thank you, Lester." Every time we watch it every night we're home. And so thank you, Lester. And then we watch Wheel of Fortune. And I'm really good at Wheel of Fortune. And I've applied to be on the show multiple times. Okay. And I've not yet gotten a call back, but I'm really good. And I call out those answers. But here's my best is once I recorded the episode and I watched the episode, and then I rewound the episode and played it as if it were live for my family. And man, I was drilling it. They were like, "That is eerie. That was really good. How good you are at Wheel of Fortune." And I don't even know if they know that I had recorded that.
Until now.
They're
listening.
Yeah, till now. So next September, when Leanne catches up on the Riff and she hears this, party's over. But until then, I'm going to be the world's best Wheel of Fortune person in her eyes.
Oh, man. You know what? I'm praying that you get on that show.
That would be awesome.
I am.
That would be awesome.
You know, Jamie is alumni. You know that, right?
Remind me of that, because
she was on Wheel of Fortune.
Do you have video of this?
Sure do.
Well, what, did she win money?
Sure did.
Okay. What happened? Because now I got some follow-up questions.
She applied.
Okay.
And then
on an online type of thing, or like sent in a letter?
Yeah, no, online. This was like 12 years ago. She sent in her whole thing.
Are you mad?
Yeah, I'm not mad. I'm just cold still.
Okay.
No, I'm cold.
Keep going.
No, my body language isn't telling the story that I wanted to tell.
Well, I want to know what happened to Wheel of Fortune that made you this way. But anyway, keep going.
She didn't win at all. A guy named Mitch did. And we still say Mitch like that.
Mitchell.
But she...
did she win any money?
She did.
How much?
$4,000.
Now, okay. Do you get the cash? Do you get the tax
You get a check. You get a check. At least we did at that point.
Really?
But it's taxed, right?
Okay.
So you don't win a total of $4,000. But
Okay.
well, it was great money, right?
Yeah.
Especially when we're, young and
Better than a poke in the eye with a sharp stick.
what we've always said. That's
Yeah.
what we've always said. But yeah, she filled out.
Did you go down with her?
Yeah, man. And that was, her brother was living in LA at the time. So it was
Oh.
a free trip out. Hung out, went to the studio.
Didn't he work at Ookla?
He did.
Yeah.
UCLA. They call it UCLA, but UCLA is, yeah. If you put it all together, it says UCLA.
Okay. Well,
But
that's, yeah.
there are some
Yeah.
dots in there that
Yeah.
kind of separate it out. But
Okay.
it's not a lot of people notice that, especially when you do it in cursive like they do on the helmets. It's hard.
The BRUINS.
Yeah.
Or they spell that
They
one out.
spell it out, Bruins. Yeah,
Okay.
they just go Bruins. But she went down to Branson. They did like a whole like mock setup at one of the theaters with all of the people that they were trying out.
They used to do that
Yeah.
in Branch. There was a show.
Yeah, right. So then they invited her to that. She didn't answer anything correctly. And then we got a letter in the mail like 2 weeks later. Said, "Welcome to the show." And then gave us the date. You'll be in LA at this time. It
Wow.
was great. It was great. And there was a moment. I don't want to brag.
No,
I know
please.
it's not.
No, it's
But
I
they've
know your
got-
heart.
Thank you. They've got a crane camera. Okay.
Yeah.
That
I've seen
swoops,
those at some
swoops,
churches, fancy
swoops.
churches.
So if you watch the episode with Jamie on it, now, yes, Jamie is on most of it because she's like a contestant.
Yeah.
But there is one moment when the crane camera swoops
Okay.
and you can see my left shoulder.
Really?
Yeah.
Front of it or back of it?
Front side.
That's my favorite.
I know.
Yeah.
So again, not bragging.
No.
But that was on national.
you're gonna boast, you boast in him.
This baby right here,
Yeah.
this left shoulder,
Yeah.
was on national television.
That's what
and
made
again,
that pectoralis major.
I
right
know.
there.
I know. Again, Jamie,
Yeah,
made
no,
me
it's
on the
about
show,
her.
but that crane camera. So
Another follow-up question.
I thought you were gonna high five me.
No,
you were raising your hand. Yeah, go ahead.
Follow-up question.
No,
So usually on in this episode, by the way, if you're still listening, you have nothing to do. So, and if you're waiting for some more content, it's not coming. So anyway, but I do have a question about Wheel of Fortune. So usually they describe their families on the Wheel of Fortune after the first, a couple pop-up rounds.
Yes.
Then they describe the families and they use adjectives. And so what adjective did she use for you? Do you remember?
honestly, it's kind of a blank part.
Oh.
I can remember beautiful.
Yes.
I remember amazing. The best was in there.
Yes.
So
yes.
I'm not 100% sure what she said, and it is
Yeah.
on video, but I
Yeah.
just haven't watched it back. But that's how I remember it.
Yeah.
And it was kind, right? It was
Yeah.
kind and true, but it was kind.
Since we've already flushed this episode down the drain, okay, let me tell you another little tidbit about me.
Okay, great.
When I watch Wheel of Fortune, they always say I have 3 beautiful children, and then I always say this out loud: How many total children do you have? Because that's hilarious. Like what you would say. I've got 5, but 3 of them are beautiful. So, and again, chuckles at my house. Chuckles at about 7
my
o'clock.
goodness.
But you remember when Who Wants to Be a Millionaire was a thing?
I do.
Oh, I was
do.
so into that. And so they had a deal where you can call a number and you would have to pass 3 trivia questions.
Listen, a lot of people don't know this. You're a trivia guy.
I
Like
I am
crazy.
a trivia guy.
You have like a weird bank of knowledge.
Why you say weird?
No, just like weird.
I got a bank of knowledge.
Yes,
I got a
bank of knowledge.
wide.
You got a
I say
wide
wide.
bank-
You
wide
say
bank-
weird?
No,
Okay.
no.
So yeah, I love trivia. So Trivial Pursuit. As a kid, my parents had that game, and that was a game that I could play with the grown-ups. And I remember them saying, "Jeremy, you're really good at this," and it became an identity thing. But so I guess we do have content. That's a therapy piece. And so I found some value in having useless information that I still do to this day.
man.
So I would call this number on Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, and you had to answer 3 questions. If you got all 3 of them right, and they were getting harder and harder, you would be in this bank where they would say, "We will call you sometime in the next 24 hours." At that point, if they call you and you answer 3 questions right, then you get invited to New York to film with Regis Philbin. And so everybody, I worked in Washington at the time, everybody knew that. And so we had some pranksters on the team. And so they knew that I was always calling in, and they knew, because I'm not shy, that I had just passed again the 3 questions, but I'd never gotten the call back. It's just random.
Okay.
And so I knew I had 24 hours where I might get a call from an unknown number, right? And so I'm in the office bathroom, okay? I'm in the bathroom and I'm just saying I'm not standing up, okay? And I don't want to get graphic, but I'm sitting down. And all of a sudden my phone rings and it's a number, an unknown number. And I answer, and it's, "Hi, this is Tony from Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, and you have 60 seconds to start our competition. You will need a pad of paper and a pen." And I spring out of my seat. I don't have time to wash my hands. I don't have time to flush. I barely have time to pull up my pants. I run into the office next door and I'm begging this coworker who's on the phone, or he's not on the phone, for a pen and paper. And he's like, "What's going on?" And pen and paper. And so then they come back on. They're like, "Hey, so you have a certain 15 seconds to answer these questions. And the first one, put these states in alphabetical order based on their state capital." And I got 15 seconds to hit the right numbers. And the second question, same type of thing. Third question, they ask, I don't even remember what the question was. I hit the number. And all of a sudden they say, "We're sorry. You have not." Turns out it was the guy that I was in his office. He had his buddy call me when he saw that I was in the bathroom.
No.
From a number that he could call. And he was just loving it. And I was crestfallen, Justin, when he said, "I'm sorry, you have entered a wrong answer." Because I'm like, "No, that's the right answer." I'm so fired up. And he was like, "You ran out of the bathroom. You didn't even flush because you want to be on this stupid game show." So yeah, I love game shows. Love game shows. Always have. So.
Oh, that is. Did they ever call? Nobody ever called?
No, I never got a call back. And I've submitted to Wheel of Fortune several times. It's now online, and I've not got a call back either. But Merv Griffin Enterprises, you got a faithful one of me. So hey, so other Christmas resources.
Other resources that you want to contextualize Jesus. I think that just those. Okay, all right. Well, I hope that's helpful.
Hey, Merry Christmas in case I don't see you between now and then.
Why would you not see me?
I think I will.
Oh, okay, great.
So,
well, Merry Christmas.
Yeah, thank you.
You're welcome.
It feels good. So we don't even know if it was December 25th. Matter of fact, probably 1 in 365 chances that it was.
Oh, that's true.
Yeah,
that's true. That's true.
All right. Anything else you want to talk about? Let's save it for the next episode.
Well, yeah, we got another one to go.
At the beginning of the year when we plot out what we want for podcasts, by the time we get to December, we get nothing, man.
That baby runs out in June.
Yeah.
So,
all right. See ya.
Thanks for listening to this episode of The Riff. We'll have a brand new episode every week, wherever you find podcasts.